This episode contains graphic content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
I got dressed, went downstairs, put the shotgun in my pants, walked down the street to a bus stop, had casual conversation with people at the bus stop, got onto the bus, went to school, took the shotgun out of my pants in the Arctic entryway, went around the corner, shot into the crowd.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Welcome to episode 12 of Awareness, a show that takes you beyond the headlines. If you haven't already, check out part 1 and 2 on school attacks, because at the end of this episode, Dr. Perrodin will summarize our discussion, and you might be a little lost if you haven't heard them already. On today's episode, Dr. Perrodin is back, and we are going to conclude our school attacks series. We will be bringing you 2 more stories: the attacks on Bethel Regional High School and Sandy Hook Elementary. You will continue to see that there were warning signs, chances for anyone to intervene, and yet no one did. And this continues to happen to this day.
Alaska. So yeah, February 19th, 1997. Evan Ramsey shot and killed 2 people. So one of the things too is, we talk about Columbine, which had a large number of fatalities in Bath, Michigan. But I want to talk too. It's very important to look at some of the school shootings which didn't result in a large number of fatalities, but had some very unusual factors and things that either we needed to learn from and didn't, or things that did change the way that we approached preparedness and response. So anyway, Evan Ramsey he was completely unfamiliar with weapons. So he had a couple of friends, 2 other boys, had him prepare his shotgun so he could go to school and carry out this school shooting. And so right there, we start to paint the picture of other people knowing. So you never even fired a gun prior to the attack. He told other kids, to look from the 2nd floor library balcony, quote unquote, for something big to happen.
Evan Ramsey explains what started it all.
My mistreatment in school.
Ramsey says people called him names, spit on him, and threw trash at him.
It gradually increased to people putting notes on my back, say kick me, and somebody else kicking me.
But how did you choose such an extreme way to express your anger?
And I know this sounds really terrible, but it just happened. I came home from school one day and I threw the book bag that I carried with myself in high school. I threw it against the wall and It happened to be the same wall that the shotgun was on.
A hunting gun that two friends, Matthew Charles and James Randall, taught him to use.
I had a plan of action. I was 100% sure that when I was in high school, after firing the gun, that the students and everybody would sit down and be still and listen to me. Again, an example of a child's mind. I actually thought they were going to sit there and listen to me.
Dr. Perrodin gives us some insight into Code of Silence. This is yet another example of someone knows something, yet nothing was done to stop this.
A girl made Ramsey promise not to follow through, but his word wasn't any good. Actually, one kid had a camera. One kid brought a camera to capture the school shooting. So I'm going to stop right here. What was the reporting system, and why did kids not bring this forward, knowing that, again, he has two other boys who are helping him prepare this attack, telling him, yeah, go for it, you're going to be famous, this girl, but no one brings this forward. So I think this really helps us, again, let's think about 1997. This helps us understand this code of silence with youth. It's really strong. The code of silence is very strong. Do not, snitch on other youth, or else if we do share information, nothing is going to happen. So I'm not going to say anything. But this code of silence, and actually there's something came out of this too. I think it's just a code of compliance. And I kind of want to, they just, the two boys helping him, that they just went along with it. It's not like it was a code of silence. Like he said, I'm going to bring a gun and everything there. And they're like, okay, and not taking him serious. I mean, they actually took him and showed him, here's how to put the ammunition in and that. So this code of compliance is kind of like helping. It's really bizarre. This really should have been a driving reason in 1997 to stop as educators and look at the code of silence with youth. And this should have been a nationwide movement. Like it should have been break the code of silence or something to that effect, getting into counseling programs in schools, getting discussions going with kids. And again, we didn't really see it. We didn't see it. Very strange, but we didn't see it. And through this, some school staff were aware, that his behaviors seemed abnormal, yet, there wasn't any deeper investigation, like having a counselor sit down with him and talk what's going on. And I found it fascinating too. He didn't single out his tormentors when he came in with the gun. It was basically indiscriminate harm is what he carried out. And we saw that, with Klebold and Harris. I mean, they didn't come in necessarily and single out, these three students. It was more indiscriminate.
Evan explains his preparation, or lack thereof, beginning 2 weeks before the attack.
I was 16. 2 weeks before the crime, I planned on committing the crime. I told James and Matthew and one of my friends, I didn't know what to do with the shotgun. I didn't know how to load it. Turns out that I was going to load the bullets the wrong way. He showed me how to load the shotgun without shooting it, how to fire it. I'd never shot a gun prior to my crime. What I wanted from committing my crime was to get people to leave me alone. And in one sense, that has actually happened. People do leave me alone.
The night before the attack, on Tuesday, February 18th, 1997, Evan Ramsey wrote 2 notes later found by investigators. The first one read, "I have thought to myself what kind of damage a 12-gauge slug can do to a human's internal organs or their head. Well, today I found out, and so did everyone else that is in school." The other note singled out the principal, Ronald Edwards. "I was told that this would be his last year, but I know it will be his last year." On Wednesday morning, February 19th, 1997, around 8:45 a.m., just before the start of class, 16-year-old Evan Ramsey entered Bethel High School with a 12-gauge shotgun hidden under his jacket. Ramsey immediately walked towards the student common area where several students were sitting. At the nearest table sat Joshua Palacios, a fellow student, talking with several of his friends. Joshua began to turn around and stand up when Ramsey pulled out the shotgun and shot him in the stomach. Joshua later died at the hospital from his wounds.
I remember everything being real chaotic, and what I anticipated would happen, what I expected would happen, it was not happening. I didn't understand why nobody was sitting there like I had expected. At one point in time, I remember Josh asked me why I shot him. I never looked at him. I actually ignored him.
One of the art teachers at the school, Rain Athanas, was in the teacher's lounge when she heard the first gunshot. She entered the hallway and observed Ramsey shooting into the ceiling. She saw Joshua laying on the floor with another student. During this episode, Ramsey paced up and down the hall several times in a very threatening manner. She and Robert Morris, another school teacher, attempted to convince Ramsey to put the shotgun down and give up. Ramsey then aimed the gun at them, but did not shoot. Ramsey walked away from Athanas and Morris, heading in the direction of the school's main office, where the school's administrative offices were located.
I spoke with one of the teachers briefly. She pleaded with me about putting the gun down. I had 2 conversations with her, and before this second conversation, somebody was coming out of the office area, and I ended up firing at them. Turned out to be the principal.
Ronald Edwards, the school principal, had been walking through the school looking for Ramsey because he had heard that Ramsey was in the school with a gun. Edwards found Ramsey as he was approaching the main office. Ramsey aimed the shotgun at Edwards. As Edwards was trying to get back into the office, Ramsey shot him in the back and shoulder. Edwards died in his office from the gunshot wounds. The art teacher got my attention after I
shot at the principal. And we spoke some more. She actually asked me to give her the shotgun, and I offered it to her. The only reason she didn't get the shotgun is there was another teacher behind her that was approaching, and I didn't know what he was doing or why I didn't know what he was up to, so I pointed the shotgun at them. The police showed up during our second conversation, and I decided to go up to the library. Made it halfway there. The shotgun fired into the lockers. The police officer, I don't recall who shot at, fired back at me. But at that point in time, I decided that I didn't want to die. And I threw the shotgun down, and the police rushed me, and I was taken into custody.
Going into his family history, so we talked about Evan Ramsey. His father was incarcerated when he was younger. Long history of family abuse and unsettled family. A week before the attack, his older brother was arrested for armed robbery. So a really complex family situation. Very much, would have been disruptive in his life, and that's one of those things too. We see more and more today. I think it was Sesame Street did a show in the last year, and they had they talked about they had the characters, and they talked about like my father or my brother is incarcerated, and what is that like? So it actually was starting to work its way into because of the prevalence of some of these things and abuse and generational poverty and things like that, to get it a little more mainstream to help kids, foster some dialogue.
Ramsey gives us some insight into his home and school life.
Sue was not like one of my previous foster homes. She was nice. One of the foster homes that I was in prior to being placed in her foster home was fairly abusive. The foster father would punish William, and William is my younger brother. He would punish he and I for coming home from school late. I've been punished for trying to stand up for William because our foster brother, he picked on William and I. He would wake us up by pinching our faces. At some point in time, William's teacher realized that signs of physical abuse, and she would ask why. It got reported to DFYS. The foster father was always there watching our conversation, and if he ever felt that I was telling him anything that he thought was wrong, I would get punished. One of the more common punishments that I would receive were being, do you know what a bungee cord is? I would have to hold my hands out in front of me, and he would whip my hands. My mother was always a binge drinker. She would turn the music up loud. The door would be open outside. She's looking to have a good time. A byproduct of that was child neglect. I've been spit on for being half native, and I've been beat up for being half white. At first, it was superficial things. People make fun of me for what I look like, how I dress, that sort of thing. I decided that I needed to stand up for myself, doing what my foster mother at the time told me to do, which was do the mature and adult thing and report all instances of bullying to the principal didn't seem to work. And I decided that I needed to do something to stand up for myself. And unfortunately, I chose to commit my crime. I didn't really understand how they could have died. Because a lot of what I based what would happen was off of video games. In video games, you can shoot somebody multiple times before they end up dying. With the assistance of good time, I'm eligible for discretionary parole. I'll be 82. Do you think there's actually a parole board that would let somebody out after serving 66 years in prison? I don't believe so. I stopped pursuing legal recourse through the appeals. I felt guilty about the prospect of cheating people out of the justice that I might feel. Some people might have found closure in the judgment I received. Obviously, since that point, I've accepted where I'm at. I've accepted my life for what it is. It wasn't until my mother passed away that I actually, I got it. I understand. Because I realized that the loss I felt from my mother dying, that the Palacios family and the Edwards family, they feel similar in nature. I'm sorry. I sincerely hope that they've been able to find closure.
Dr. Perrodin gives us his final thoughts on the Bethel High School attack.
What comes out of this to me is 1997 code of silence, and the fact that, he had an audience waiting for this to happen and nobody said anything. I mean, somebody could have gone, to the principal and said, "Hey, he's coming in with the gun," and even anonymously, put some, some note in underneath a door or whatever it would be, or tell a parent. So we come to this point, and I go through all of this, and my question is, what was the reporting system? How were kids made aware of the reporting system? Were they clearly told of what is normal and what's not normal? And I think all of us have a tendency, what's called this Taurus, and a Taurus basically is that we try to normalize things. And there were people who did this during the recent hurricanes, Harvey and Irma. They would stay at their house and be like, "Oh, this is like every other hurricane," and then pretty soon it'd be like, "Oh, this isn't like every other hurricane." They kind of would move outside of this. So these kids would be like, "Yeah, he's acting this way or whatever," but this is normal. We don't have shootings here, and he's spouting off, and it's just he'll come back down. So that's a big question I have. And before we go any further in this, I work with a company in California, Sprigeo, Sprigeo, and I serve as a professional consultant to the company, and they are throughout the entire country with online threat reporting systems in schools. Very effective, and they have documented cases where they have prevented school shootings. We kind of work together on developing the system. And one of the things that I work with is, I said, we have to make sure, one is we help people educate kids on, what is a bullying and what is threat, what's outside of this normal, and then how to report it. And the third part is that we overlook that we have students with disabilities, learning disabilities, English language learners, and in some schools that's 20%, that's 50% of your kids. So you create systems which just aren't accessible. And I think, and this whole thing too of, you'll just tell an adult if something's going to happen. Well, a lot of kids aren't going to do that. and it's uneasy, and they're afraid, am I going to be identified now? And do I have to sit? And they're like, Billy came in and told us that this is what you told him. And Billy's like, whoa, like, you don't know what you're getting me into by exposing me. So yeah. And that's where I look at Bethel, and you think of Bethel, Alaska. I mean, as remote, of something like this happening, and this knowledge again throughout the student body, some significant knowledge. If you're two friends helping, here's how to load the weapon, and yet nothing comes forward. So my question, this question is starting to become redundant, is what's the education process, and what's the reporting system and the investigation? And those remain to this day largely unanswered questions.
Up next, we examine the school attack on Sandy Hook Elementary. Stay tuned.
So Sandy Hook Elementary School, December 14th, 2012, Newton, Connecticut, resulting in 28 deaths. And we know the tragedy of just the young lives that were lost. The perpetrator was 20-year-old Adam Lanza, who was diagnosed with autism. I'm saying that because this becomes very significant as I start to unpack the story. So this attack sparked a national push to fortify school buildings. Right after Sandy Hook, I was working in a school district in Wisconsin. So, we're talking nowhere near. And parents were calling, parents and wanting to have PTO meetings. And this was happening all over the state. This is happening all over the country, wanting to get together saying, what are you doing to prevent this from happening here? And schools were responding by putting together letters saying, we are going to review all of our policies and practices regarding school safety. They were holding community forums, letting parents, and parents were, what were parents saying? 80% of the time they're saying, we want bulletproof glass, we want steel doors, we want guards at the entrances. That's what they're saying. So there were 450 bills that came out 6 months after Sandy Hook across the country. Yes, armed teachers. And that was largely in the South. And then the more you got to the northern U.S., it was measures, more or less into fortification. But yeah, arming was definitely very present in the southern part of the United States. What was missing from these 450 bills? Largely mental health services, that wasn't there. Better curriculums as far threat reporting systems, nowhere. 450 bills, a threat reporting system. Trying to identify residue, making sure you had redundant systems, that you had laws in place, that you would work right at the start of the school year and make sure you had an induction process for kids and staff and parents on here's what to look for, here's how to report it. Nothing. There was a bill that said, we're going to build schools without windows. And, it was actually, what happened from this? So we have this push for fortification. Now, social media gets this out. This is what I would say would be the first social media, school massacre. And it's out all over the place. Everybody is getting this on their phone and their images, and the media is just coming in, and it just is getting replayed over and over and over and over and over again. And yeah, so communities that weren't even affected responded as if they were affected. Like the school that I was in, completely in a different state. The community was responding as if this had happened in the community. Like they wanted things, and they actually went to referendum. They went to referendum and passed a multi-million-dollar package for improving physical school safety in their buildings. They redesigned entrances and things. Not that was bad, but we know that school connectedness practices, per research from the Centers for Disease Control, multiple studies, meta-analysis, getting kids connected to school, getting better, and also better reporting systems, is much more effective in preventing attacks than any of these things. Because what are we seeing right now in Nice, France? What are we seeing in Charlottesville? We're seeing that if you harden one target, another target becomes a soft target. So all of this stuff came out of Sandy Hook, and too that it was this easy entrance and he got in and it should have been more fortified. That wasn't true at all. I mean, it was actually one of the, I would say, safest schools at that time. Now, I've read the report that came out, about a year and a half later, and I think there are 10 hours of video with that. There's several hundred pages. It was done by the state in conjunction with the FBI, Secret Service, and so forth. They did their drills. I mean, they had their double entrances. But when you come in with what Adam Lanza came in with as far as the firepower, there's not much you can do to prevent that. So yeah, they were kind of pinpointing, that and saying, they weren't prepared, but that quickly got dispelled.
On the morning of December 14th, 2012, sometime before 9:30 a.m., Adam Lanza shot and killed his mother while she was in bed. Shortly after 9:30 a.m., he approached the front entrance to Sandy Hook Elementary School. He was armed with a Bushmaster rifle, 2 pistols, and a large supply of ammunition. The doors were locked to the school, as they customarily were at this time, the school day having already begun. Lanza proceeded to shoot his way into the school building through the plate glass window to the right of the front lobby doors. The main office staff reported hearing noises and glass breaking at approximately 9:35 a.m. and saw Lanza wearing a hat and sunglasses come into the school building with the rifle-type gun. He was seen shooting the rifle down the hallway. Just down the hallway from the main office, in the direction that Lanza was seen firing, a 9:30 a.m. planning and placement team meeting was being held in room 9, a conference room. The meeting was attended by Principal Don Hawksprung and school psychologist Mary Sherlock, together with a parent and other school staff. Shortly after the meeting started, the attendees heard a loud banging. The principal and school psychologist then left the room. They were shot as they left the conference room. Both the principal and school psychologist were killed. After shooting and killing the principal and school psychologist and wounding 2 others, Lanza entered the main office. The office staff reported that they heard sounds of the office door opening, footsteps walking inside the office and then back towards the office door. Staff members heard the door open a second time and then heard more gunfire from outside the office. At approximately 9:35 a.m., the first 911 call is made.
911, what's the location of the emergency?
Sandy Hook School. I think there's somebody shooting in here. Sandy Hook School.
Okay, what makes you think that?
Because somebody's got a gun. I saw a glimpse of somebody. They're running down the hallway.
Okay.
They're still running. They're still shooting. Sandy Hook School, please. Oh.
911 calls begin to flood in.
In town 911, what's the address?
It's 10 Dickinson Drive in Sandy Hook, Newtown, Connecticut.
Okay, what's going on at 10 Dickinson Drive?
It sounds like there are gunshots in the hallway. I'm a teacher in the school.
Okay, where are you in the school right now?
I am in the school. I'm in the classroom.
Okay, do you have everyone in the classroom and the door?
All of my students. The door is not locked yet. I have to go.
Okay, lock the door. Tell me, keep everybody calm, keep everybody down, get everybody away from the windows, okay?
Yes, okay.
Right. Where are you in the school?
I'm in the hallway when you walk in the front entrance if you take a left.
Okay. All right, just try to lock down the school, okay?
We're trying, okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Right.
John 911, what's the location of your emergency?
Sandy Hook Elementary School, 12 Dickinson Drive.
Okay, I've got that. What's going on down there?
I believe they're shooting at the front glass. Something's going on.
All right, I want you to stand on the line with me. Where are you in the school?
I'm down the corridor.
All right, I want you to take cover. Jen, get the sergeant. All right, get everybody you can going down there. All right, let me get some information from you. What makes you think that?
The front glass was all shot out there. It kept going on.
Okay.
Chris, I'm on the line with a 911 call with you.
It's still happening.
Shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School.
Lanza then proceeded down the hallway in an easterly direction. entering first grade classrooms 8 and 10. While in classrooms 8 and 10, Lanza shot and killed 4 adults and 20 children. 12 children survived from classroom 8 and 11 from classroom 10. Lanza finally killed himself in classroom 10 with 1 gunshot to his head. This is believed to have occurred at 9:40 a.m. The attack lasted approximately 5 to 7 minutes.
Adam Lanza, right away, they're trying to portray Adam Lanza, this kid with, basically what they're saying, this kid with autism comes in and shoots up a school. And what gets portrayed out of the media is he has autism. And very shortly after that, autism, high functioning autism means that you have a disconnect from your ability to read emotions, to feel empathy, to feel remorse. So basically we have, and also that he's antisocial, that he has no social, like minimal communication skills. I mean, that was very clearly portrayed. So the image that people are getting is this kid who probably doesn't talk to anybody else, has no social skills, couldn't probably write anything down more than a few notes on an index card, and maybe had this savant type quality or whatever, with his video gaming and things like that. But so what happens suddenly is the news media starts questioning, and they're like, did he do this because of autism? Did autism remove that filter that we would have for identifying what is socially right and wrong, I guess? And imagine now parents all across the United States, all across the world, having children going to school, and they're the parents of a child with autism. They're like, oh my goodness, I'm sending my kid to school tomorrow, and the media is saying kids with autism don't have the social skills to process what's right and wrong, and are more prone to be attackers, are more prone to carry out what Adam Lanza did. What's going to happen to my kid today at school? Is my school board going to say, screen these kids, screen them out? And there were bills that asked for that, and there are no screeners to do that. By the way, there's no screener for a school shooter. There's no profile for a school shooter, and there are people willing to sell you these things. But for the short amount of time, this was very, very scary, because it quickly created the us and them, and the them became kids with autism. And if you were in that category, then you're going to be scrutinized pretty heavily. Thankfully, the medical community jumped in, right away on that. In about 2 weeks, that connection went away.
Dr. Perrodin shed some light onto Adam Lanza's ability to communicate.
We talk about Adam Lanza, and I want to read you something, and it's going to be small. There's a lot of this out there, but I just want to read this. Okay, some permutation of alienation, which has been part and parcel with societal progress. That was written by Adam Lanza on the website, mass killer website, Shocked Beyond Belief. So he was making elaborate posts to this website, kind of short manifestos, very articulate.
On December 11th, 2011, almost 1 year to the day before the Sandy Hook attack, Adam Lanza called into a radio show called Anarchy Radio on KWVA-FM under the name Greg. So you might ask yourselves, how do we know it was Adam? Well, as Dr. Perrodin mentioned, he posted over 290 comments on the website called Shocked Beyond Belief under the username Smiggles. Under this username, he made a few posts about Travis the Chimp. You know the one, the chimp who ripped off the face and arms of Charlie Nash. On December 21st, 2011, Smiggles posted the following, quote, "My call starts at 38 minutes. It didn't go as horribly as I anticipated. I wish I hadn't spoken nonstop about Travis for so long, but I didn't want to seem crazy by randomly bringing up a chimpanzee for unknown reasons. And despite my failed attempt at having a normal voice, I at least sounded less incoherent than usual. I normally speak much softer and swifter, with less articulation, less inflection, and more mumbling." End quote. I'm going to play the call for you in its entirety, as it may provide a clue into why he murdered those children and adults.
There we go. Hello. We get the collapsible headphones here, but we're back.
Sorry, we got Greg on the phone.
Oh, Greg. Okay. How's it going?
Hi, good. I'm a fan of your writing.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
sorry
you
to
very
bring up such an old news story, but I couldn't find anything that you said about the topic, and it seems relevant to your interest, so I thought I would bring up Travis the chimp. Do you remember him?
I don't.
Well, he was a highly domesticated chimpanzee who lived in a suburban home in Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And he was raised just like a human child starting from the week he was born. By the time that he was 14 years old, which would be somewhere around age 20 in human years,
Uh-huh.
he slept in a bed, he took his own baths, he dressed himself, he brushed his teeth with an electric toothbrush.
Really? When was this?
Well, this happened in early 2009.
Oh.
Oh.
He ate his meals at a table and enjoyed human foods like ice cream. And he used a remote control to watch television and liked baseball games. And he even used a computer to look at pictures on the internet.
Huh.
And it goes without saying that Travis was very overweight. He was 200 pounds when he should have been around the low hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually taking Xanax.
Amazing.
I couldn't find any information about why he was taking it, but it just seems to say a lot that he was given it at all. And basically, I think Travis wasn't really any different than a mentally handicapped human child. But anyway, one day in February 2009, he was acting very agitated, and at some point grabbed his owner's car keys, went outside and started leaping from car to car, apparently wanting to go for a car ride. And he was acting very aggressively, so his owner called her friend over to get her to help him to calm down and go back inside. And once she arrived, he immediately attacked her, and his owner tried to stop him, but couldn't, and she even resorted to stabbing him with a knife, but nothing worked. And she said that after she stabbed him, he looked at her as if to say, "Why'd you do that to me, Mom?" Because apparently that was what their relationship was like, no different than between a human mother and a human child. So after the stabbing, she called the police, who arrived 12 minutes after the attack, at which point her friend was pretty close to dead. And once the cruiser came up, Travis went over to it, tried to open the locked passenger door. He smashed off the side view mirror, went over to the driver's door, opened it, and the cop shot him. He fled back into the house, where he went to his playroom and bled to death. And this might not seem very relevant, but I'm bringing it up because afterward, everyone was condemning his owner for saying how irresponsible she was for raising a chimp like it was a child, and that she should have known something like this would happen because chimps aren't supposed to be living in civilization. They're supposed to be living in the wild among each other. But their criticism stops there, and the implication is that there's no way anything could have gone wrong in his life if he had been living in civilization as a human rather than a chimp.
Ah, indeed.
So interested in Travis because he brings up questions about this whole process of child raising.
Yeah.
Isn't something which just happens to gently exist without us having to do anything, because every newborn child, human child, is born in a chimp-like state, and civilization is only sustained by conditioning them for years on end so that they'll accept it for what it is. And since we've gone through this conditioning, we can observe a human family raising a human child, and I'm sure that even you have trouble intuitively seeing it as something unnatural. But when we see a chimp in that position, we viscerally know that there's something profoundly wrong with the situation. And it's easy to say there's something wrong with it simply because it's a chimp, but what's the real difference between us and our closest relatives? Travis wasn't an untamed monster at all. He wasn't just feigning domestication, he was civilized. He was able to integrate into society. He was a chimp actor when he was younger, and his owner drove him around the city frequently in association with her towing business, where he met many different people and got along with everyone. If Travis had been some nasty monster all his life, it would have been widely reported, but to the contrary, it seems like everyone who knew him said how shocked they were that Travis had been so savage, because they knew him as a sweet child. And there were 2 isolated incidents early in his life when he acted aggressively, but summarizing them would take too long, so basically I'll just say that he didn't act really any differently than a human child would, and the people who would use that as an indictment against having chimps live as humans do wouldn't apply the same thing to humans, so it's just kind of irrelevant. But anyway, look what civilization did to him. It had the same exact effect on him as it has on humans. He was profoundly sick in every sense of the term, and he had to resort to these surrogate activities like watching baseball and looking at pictures on a computer screen and taking Xanax. He was a complete mess. And his attack wasn't simply because he was a senselessly violent, impulsive chimp, which was how his behavior was universally portrayed. Immediately before his attack, he had desperately been wanting his owner to drive him somewhere. And the best reason I can think of for why he would want that, looking at his entire life, would be that some little thing he experienced was the last straw, and he was overwhelmed by the life that he had, and he wanted to get out of it by changing his environment, and the best way that he knew how to deal with that was by getting his owner to drive him somewhere else.
Yeah.
And when his owner's friend arrived, he knew that she was trying to coax him back into his life of domestication, and he couldn't handle that, so he attacked her and anyone else who approached him. And dismissing his attack as simply being the senseless, violent impulsiveness of a chimp instead of a human is wishful thinking at best. His attack can be seen entirely parallel to the attacks, random acts of violence that you bring up on your show every week, committed by humans, which the mainstream also has no explanation for. And
No.
an actual human, I just don't think it would be such a stretch to say that he very well could have been a teenage mall shooter or something like that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
That's quite a story. Yeah, that's really apropos, isn't it? Travis the chimp.
It's just that I'm a little surprised that I never heard you bring it up at all, because maybe I'm just seeing connections where there aren't any, but...
I think not. No, I didn't catch that one. I didn't, maybe I was out of the country or something, I don't know, but I missed it. Thanks very much, man.
Thank you.
Take care. Wow, very well articulated, I think.
And I agree. I mean, I didn't know until I started to look into this and actually read these, and I don't know if it didn't fit the media narrative. You know, that they had the media had really portrayed him as a very, I think, cognitively inept, socially incompetent youth with just this ideology to kill. But you read all of this body of work that he puts together, and it reminds me a lot of Ted Kaczynski. And Ted Kaczynski's manifesto was largely, against mechanized society and his issues. But Adam Lanza was very, very articulate in writing about how he felt we were indoctrinating children with these governmental beliefs, which were not accurate. And it is amazing, the language, the register that he uses, the arguments he puts together. It's delusional, but they're logical. I mean, they follow the language that he uses, the arguments, how he puts them together. So when he comes into Sandy Hook and carries out his massacre, there can be an argument made that he's doing this because he is trying to prevent these young minds from becoming indoctrinated and carrying out some government agenda, which isn't in their best interest going forward. So he's just trying to step in and take care of this inevitable disaster that these youth he perceives will run into because of the system that they're in. So, wow, like no one ever puts that out there. They're just saying this is a kid who's angry at life. He's angry at his mom. His parents are divorced. He's into video games. He just came in and he had access to weapons. And this is one of those things too, of like, there's no way mom should have had weapons available to him. And he's asking for weapons and she's buying him weapons, knowing it, and too with his psychologist or psychiatrist. And that gets to be really tricky too, because I have a friend who's a psychiatrist and he said, it's a fine line because, your client could sue you for ruining their reputation. If you say, I feel you need to be put into a facility for treatment, and all of a sudden their employer's like, oh my goodness, now I've got, I didn't know that this person had these needs. So you run this fine line. And that's what, I also came out in Colorado, the theater shooting that the Aurora, the psychologist was saying it was a fine line. I mean, you're the way the laws are, it could have gone either way.
Dr. Perrodin gives us some perspective on the events immediately following the attack at Sandy Hook.
Let's talk about what happened with Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook was, again, the first social media firestorm that hit, and it hit every school. And I knew schools that sent letters home that would say, we're looking at every policy for safety. We're going to do safety walkthroughs. And I actually went to these schools and said, don't do this. Like, this is something you should do every day. Like, this is just part of your fabric. It's not that Sandy Hook causes this. What if there's something similar a week from now or 2 weeks from now? Are you going to continue to send these letters home? And I mean, yes, meet as an administrative team and review your practices and stuff like this. But it's not like you're just feeding into this with parents. I mean, you're just adding to this now of almost saying like, yeah, we have this, and we're going to look at our kids, and we're going to. It's like, whoa, like it's you're basing this on rhetoric right now. You're not basing this on fact, and that's what happens. So yeah, changes. So we saw the social media frenzy. We saw, and I brought it up. Columbine showed us that people are going to rush to a scene, and that happened again with Sandy Hook. One thing I tell people or tell schools is schools will have what they refer to as like a staging area. They'll say, if we have to evacuate the school, we'll take all the kids to this location. I tell them, don't even mess with that, because you don't know the radius that law enforcement will put around. So if you tell parents to, we're going to go 2 blocks away to this church is in this community halls where we're going to go. Well, maybe not. Like, that's not in the mix at all. That area is off. Well, now you have parents who are there, and all of a sudden the kid's not there. And so, yeah, just really, oh, goodness. But so, yeah, we have this heavy push to fortify schools, heavier than I've ever seen in my life. And people so passionate. I mean, that they are crying at meetings. And again, they're hundreds of miles, thousands of miles away. A friend in California, who is a psychologist, who said it was unbelievable. And the school boards, they voted in, and there was almost no hesitation. So the industry thrived. I mean, there were bulletproof backpacks being sold to schools. There were dry erase boards that were bulletproof being sold to schools. Ricori, Minnesota, shortly after Sandy Hook, bought bulletproof whiteboards. These are before the smart boards. Whiteboards, but which dry erase basically that you could take off and hide behind. I mean, ridiculous stuff. But they're being marketed for hundreds and thousands of dollars in these sophisticated surveillance systems and all of that. But again, I'm asking the question of what was the reporting, the system. And we know that, for example, Adam was doing these posts. His mom was aware. His psychologist was aware. Psychiatrist. His dad had concerns. Let's look at that. I mean, let's understand that more.
Keep in mind that this interview with Dr. Perrodin happened in August of last year. Yet it still rings true, and it applies to the latest school attack that occurred on Valentine's Day. So
I think from Sandy Hook, what happened, we had the identification of, Adam Lanza with autism, and then what happens with autism. as being instantly characterized as all people with autism have these tendencies. Well, what if it wasn't autism? What if it came out that he had, he was bipolar or he had depression or whatever? Then it's just that category. So that's another reason as a parent to be like, oh, I'm nervous about if this diagnosis gets out. And these 450 state bills of people like fortify, and the fact that people just did it. They just put past. I mean, if a financially struggling school district and if they had to vote on this versus some curriculum and updating some whatever bill, boom, we are going for the fortification, flat out. We're voting it in. And it's not empirically based. I mean, the research isn't there. And I can't help but think that these districts, as soon as like the Nice France, the vehicle attack happened, and then Charlottesville and things like that, they're thinking, oh, like we have nothing in place for things like this. And it's like, yeah, you can't cover all contingencies. I mean, what if it's a bus stop? What if it's this? So that's where we kind of get later, now into things like situational awareness and teaching, some skills and things like that. But so we look at Sandy Hook and we can see how that can rapidly impact schools and communities all over the country in these responses, which are based more on rhetoric than anything else. And people then spend millions of dollars on means which technically don't make them any safer from a research standpoint. But did anything really change from Sandy Hook? Do we have better reporting systems? Was anything done? No. So I ask myself a little bit now, have we also reached a point where people almost just kind of expect this and they expect it? There'll be a reaction. They'll change their Facebook, logo for a little while and people move on. And that kind of scares me because I don't see where we're progressing in what I would say trying to get to the root of it organically. Like fortifying a building, that addresses a direct cause. A student is coming up with a gun, you might be able to stop them from entering. Doesn't mean they can't get on a playground or something, but that's not getting at a root cause of what's really bringing that student to that point in their life.
With so much of our lives on display for the world to see, the opportunities are there to notice the downward spirals in action that the potential attackers are experiencing. And keep in mind, we saw this in Florida. On the other hand, social media can also validate some of these delusional ideas. Whatever the case may be, we need to be aware of it, and we need to be aware of its place. The doc gives us perspective.
We have something happening with social media. We talk about school attacks and homicides, but we're missing a piece of this right now, and that's the fact that we have an increase in suicides, youth suicides across the country, and also harm to self by youth. And what is happening with social media is, we talked about most school attacks take months. The kids plan these out for months, and it's not typically a knee-jerk reaction to something that happened. And if it is a knee-jerk reaction, it typically is then centered on revenge against maybe like one person or something like that. But anyway, you mentioned it, and I'll mention it again. But you can make a post, or someone can make a post about you on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and do anything, and basically destroy your character. It can go viral. They can post an image of you, and how many times do kids share images, or they can make up an image or make a false post or a false Facebook page, and suddenly that it goes viral. And it's all over the place. The kid wakes up in the morning and it's like, oh my goodness, I can't, their phone and all the messages, and they become overwhelmed and they result to suicide because they don't know any other way out. And this actually happens not just with kids, but I mean, this is happening with reporters. I listened to a podcast of a reporter that did a story and had such negative feedback on the story, had to actually leave her home and had to go to another, location. I think eventually, and shut down all of her social media accounts and was just terrified for her own life. And it was something that was fairly benign. It was a position on some, piece of legislation that was coming through. But yeah, kids, again, frontal lobe is developing with kids. So they can't process their options and they don't know to go to their adult, and they're embarrassed, to bring this to mom or dad of saying, this picture was posted of me, or this person is doing this. So I think we have social media contributing to youth just not knowing what to do in these situations, and we see more harm to self and suicides, and not necessarily homicides coming out of that. But social media is this platform. We saw it with Adam Lanza. We saw it with Harris back when chat rooms and things were kind of in their infancy. But right now, there's through the different chat rooms, the posts that can go back and forth, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever kids use. You have this residue. Kids can leave these messages. The threats can be out there. The photos of them with weapons and things. They're pretty overt. Like, we talked about, if you're in your vehicle and someone cuts you off, you might hit the horn or something like that, and you normally wouldn't do that. But it's the same with kids. They get kind of they don't have that filter. They'll put this out there. So it's like you do actually have capacity with social media. And this is where, when I work with Sprigio, social media opens this door wide open for you to look and scour for pieces that might help give an indication that something is notably wrong, threatening. This is out of the torus. This is out of the normal. And then that information needs to be carried forward. Plus, then you also have it time-stamped and you have an image of it. So there's some great assets as far as like investigation for this. Now, people will say, like, do you go into social media and kids can research like how to carry out these things? Not really. That's not really happening. It's not like they're going in. I mean, they'll do some of that, but they would have done that anyway through, either reading books through the library, or you can get the anarchist's cookbook and stuff like that. So it's not like you're coming up with these brand new creative ways to carry out attacks and things like that. But what does happen, like when you come in, like Adam Lanza, and you start posting in a forum which already has a title that the type of people who are posting in that forum. You start to get these people who like what you say, who comment, who start to tell you, go ahead and do it, go for it. Like, this is the right thing. And you can also have it go the other way of someone, saying, like nobody likes you, you're useless, and all of these things. And that tends to go more in maybe the suicide trend than the homicide trend. But yeah, you definitely get this massive validation, and it's so empowering. And it is, and that's what I'm seeing more and more, that's happening when kids or anybody starts to post in these forums, and you look at it 18 months later in the FBI investigations and things like that, and just the number of people who support them. So yeah, so it's this new medium. I guess we could say a telephone was a medium, years ago, and now social media is a medium. But the fact that this can go so fast, and you can get people to validate you that don't even know you and from all over. And I think that's just, so empowering. So, and that happened, with Adam Lanza, once he got in and started to post, more and more people getting behind him and supporting his ideologies. And, I think eventually leading him to the point of feeling this vindication because others are saying, but yet, like, we talk about this right now. This is a super place. If you educate kids and parents, you sit down and you talk and say, here's examples of post. Here's actually what a post looks like, and take out identifying information. If you see this is what you do. You bring it to this person, like copy the post and whatever directives you give. But do we do that? No. And it's like, so at the same time, this creates these negative effects. It also creates this opportunity for us to have actual time-stamped pieces of information that we can bring into people who can investigate and who can ask questions. So I'm excited about that. We have a real opportunity if we use social media correctly and educate parents and staff and students about it, but we don't do it. We don't do it.
There are few schools beginning to enhance their curriculum, by incorporating instruction on how to use social media appropriately. On this podcast alone, from episodes on child sex trafficking to grooming and even bullying, the common element is the destructive nature of social media. It has infiltrated all aspects of our lives, yet there's little to no instruction on how to use it appropriately. The instruction should come from schools and parents. Dr. Perrodin shares the lessons learned from the stories we have discussed on school attacks.
The first thing is media rhetoric establishes instant claimed facts. So when something happens, the news will come on and they'll say, this child was bullied, this was a situation, whatever. So within an hour, it's like everything has been discovered. When we know, in reality, the investigation hasn't even, begun yet. So there has to be this I guess, willingness of people to wait for the facts to come out. And of course, it's visceral. Anytime schools are attacked, schools are very sacred. 55 million kids go to school. If we can't protect our kids, who can we protect? How are we failing as a society? So it becomes very personal. But again, whatever you're going to hear from the media, that's rhetoric. They're going to interview whoever they can grab at that time. They're going to be making statements which likely later will not be proven. It's kind of like in that redaction that comes out on whatever page. But these investigations are very comprehensive and take months. So I would say avoid the knee-jerk reaction. I know it's tough, and I experienced that too. Like I experienced, that after Sandy Hook happened, my daughter was a first grader at the time. So first graders massacred at Sandy Hook. And the next day I have to think, do I send my daughter to school? Because is there someone in my community who's thinking, wow, this is a way for me now to up it and become famous? And I remember driving away to work that day and looking at the odometer, and it would go, I'm 1 mile away from her school, I'm 2 miles away, I'm 3 miles away, and 4. And I had this thought in my mind of, if anything happened, like, could I spin the vehicle around and how long would it take me to get there? And this is what I do. Like, I have a PhD in this stuff, and I train people all over the world and work in systems. And for me to have those thoughts, I knew other people were having those thoughts too. So the reality is to pull back and to realize the chance of, if we go to probability, you're much more likely to be killed by lightning than to be killed in a school shooting. Once every 13,000 years in any school building. Schools are very, very safe, safer than crossing the street and things like this. So what you hear initially, you need to govern yourself, and you need to think, bring rational thought back to it. And again, we know it's very, very unlikely. It's like 0.00002% that there would be a school shooting, like at your child's school that day. I mean, it's minuscule. And if it happens, though, like when I work with districts, they'll say, but if it happens here, it's catastrophic. Well, yeah, obviously. We need situational awareness. So we've talked about this the whole time. Situational awareness, being aware of your surroundings, being aware. And they teach this very well to prison people entering as prison guards. Rory Miller is an author. He has several books out there, and this was his job. He was in corrections, but he talks about how you need to, as you said, body language, like watch kind of what the prisoners are doing, where they're looking, where they're congregating, what they're saying, and things like that. And it's this whole thing of, we can teach this. There's the situational awareness comes out of Carl Wake, University of Michigan, has theories based upon this. And, if we showed, it's like showing 5 pictures and saying, what's different from picture 1 versus picture 5? And it's like, might be like, well, this is moved, to the left, and this is missing this. And it's those types of things, like just being aware of your environment and situational awareness. I like to be really overt. This is if it was up to me, this is how we would train school for school safety. So the administrators would come in at the start of the school year, and they would get the teachers together, and they would go through all the safety aspects of the handbook, like piece by piece. Do you have any questions? They would stop always, like, do you have questions about this? Okay, and then like if you see a threat, and here's what it could look like. They, put it up. Here's an example. Does anyone else have an example? And they go through, here's our reporting system. Now, I want each of you to use the reporting system. So what the kids would do if they come to you, also here's the first day, what I want you to do. Now we pause right there, and we know that kids start after day one. We know staff start after day one. So you have to have an induction process. So, you record it, or you have some process of it. Someone comes in new that they understand this. You sit down with the kids, either in a bigger group setting or smaller classroom settings, and saying, here's, if you're feeling unsafe about something, if you're feeling something's not right, if a friend is posting like this, or says threatening this, or if you see this at somebody's house or whatever, or just you like this, and get really explicit and have people give examples, then I want you to do this. This is how we report it, and have redundant systems. We can do it. You can tell me, we have this online system, and make the kids do it. And the other thing is, I was a director of special ed for a number of years. I never once saw an IEP, individualized education plan for a student with a disability. I never once saw a plan that had student will learn how to identify a situation where there is harm to self or potentially harm to others, and then how to engage the threat reporting system. I've never seen that goal. Yet that is a goal that should be probably in, tens of thousands of IEPs all across the country. And it's not there. It's not there. So, you have systems that kids just can't access. They're too complicated. So you have to teach kids the system. So teaching kids the system and having a competence that they can actually do this and documenting it. Instead of, remember that first day of school thing, it's like, hey, here's the handbook, sign the first page and rip it off, and you're responsible for the rest of it. No. And another part is, to have the same thing, a parent forum, and saying here's things. And also in this parent forum of saying, if anything happens at school and your kid's going to text you or let you know or whatever, don't come to the school, because we have to have emergency responders. Now, you're still going to have some parents come to the school. But at least you can tell them. And when parents are coming to the school and they see different police cars from different agencies and things like that, they've already heard that. And that's a different response when you come in. Even if it's the same thing, but you've already been told this is what to expect, you're going to process that much, much better. We know that. We definitely know that from emergency response things. So yeah, I would be really overt. I would get, parents together and say that. And when I'm meeting with staff as an administrator, here's another thing. I worked with a school district, and they had a school shooting. Student actually took his own life, had held a classroom hostage. And they asked me to come up and to work with the administrative team. And one of the things that surprised me that I heard from that I'd never anticipated is people were traumatized, the administrative team, and they would share, teachers were extremely traumatized by that event. Again, smaller district, didn't think this would happen. This was a student who was a Boy Scout, and, so all of that. But the secondary trauma that occurred was when this was done, the teachers were not allowed to go back into their classrooms. They couldn't get their personal belongings. They couldn't go to the parking lot and take their vehicles out. It was a crime scene. Everything was blocked off. And the panic that set in with the teachers and with the, other staff, even administrators of, oh my goodness. And it was kind of a rural school. How am I going to get home? Well, that had been handled. There were other districts who were shipping in, buses and vehicles to do that. But people were separated from my purse or my jacket or my car, and they couldn't handle it. They would break down and they would try to do negotiations with the police. Just please, just check my vehicle, do what you need to do and let me get it out. And they'd be like, no, we can't do it. So what the administrative team we work through and what they said is, every year we're going to tell our staff, if anything happens like this, you're not going to be able to come back in to get your things. And the staff, and actually after 9/11, the Twin Towers attacks, there are groups who get together, survivors of the Twin Tower attacks, go to other high rises, and they tell them the same thing. like, you're, if anything happens to evacuate, like, don't, steps to do, like, don't try to grab your things and whatever. And you're not going to be able to go back and try to recover, stuff if it's a crime scene. But even these types of things help people so much, like just get a sense of control. And also this thing too of telling parents flat out in these active shooter type situations, say, these are non-linear. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. So we will report out to you with the media, like your school administrator and whoever your incident command chief is, where we're going to stage the kids and stuff like that, because it might be, a mile away, it might be 2 miles away or something like that. And so you don't, again, have parents anticipating one thing and then suddenly that's changed. And now they think, oh my goodness, the situation has eroded even further. So I'm really for being overt, like just putting it all out on the line and being very, explicit, and having kids. Yeah. If you see this stuff, this is what it actually looks like. I think it's time to take the gloves off and to stop sugarcoating this stuff.
This concludes our series on school attacks. It was unexpected that we would have 2 school shootings during the release of these episodes. And what's heartbreaking is that the lessons that were exposed from the 5 stories we examined, that all happened years ago, have not been applied comprehensively. Now, in some cases, as you heard, threat reporting works despite limitations and focus in that area. As the safety doc mentions, threat reporting should be a focus. And it should be a focus because it's not constrained by our politics or our views on gun control. This is something we can all rally around. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the final episode before our mid-season break. Thanks to Dr. Perrodin for sharing with us his expertise on school safety and for joining us for the School Attack series. Go check out his podcast, the Safety Doc Podcast. And if you need his contact information, you can find that on awareness.podcast.com/guests. Thanks to Shane Yoder and his team at puttheminasong.com for the theme music and Ed Luby for the awareness logo. And to my family, thanks for all your support. Without you, this would not be possible. Until next time, be aware, stay aware, and I'll talk to you soon.